It really is a joy to be here and to have our purpose to laugh together. Marietta Farlow from First Friends Greensboro would say inner aerobics. So we are exercising our innards today. Sometimes when one is a pastoral minister and Sunday comes almost every week, one must try to find ways to keep the people in the pews alert and interested. It ain't easy. It's unlikely that Mary was thinking of sending in the clowns when she asked if I'd speak today, but she had to take what she could get. So the official return, as I said, of the Judith Dancy Laugh-In Sunday has begun. Diligently searching for a way to make this a legitimate way of sermonizing on Sunday, I found a tie-in this short story, The Fable of the Pastor Who Flew His Kite, but Not Because He Wished to Do So, by George Ade. Now, he died in 1944, the year I was born, so it was written before then at some point, and I didn't get the date. Now, let's see if my new machine kind of thing can do what I want it to do. So let me get to the, no, I didn't want Siri. Whoops. Okay, somebody, there we go. No. I'm sorry. I thought I had it. The Fable of the Preacher. Yes. I want that. Oh, fiddle. Oh, there it is. Excuse me, but I'm old. And technology is not as old as I am. Oh, my Lord in heaven.
And the IT guy is somewhere else.
Safari. My iPad is not connected to the internet.
Service in here.
Is there internet that I can connect to?
I can give you a hotspot.
Would you?
Would you like me to?
I don't know what that means. Hey, baby. Yeah. Does Robert know about that?
I don't know Apple though.
Okay.
Okay, so let's get to, I'll leave this for just a second.
Please do.
So let's go here. I'm going to turn on my personal hotspot. And we're going to connect here. It should come up. That's me.
Okay. Oh, let me so, I won't move.
No, it's fine.
Quaker simplicity extends to being low tech.
Yeah. Judith, you now know what I felt like when I was trying to find something.
Well, yeah. I mean, I started to print it, and I thought,
crazy.
oh, no, I've got my iPad.
Okay, so let's go back to here. Now you should be able to
I can
connect.
get stuff in the other room.
Refresh
I
it.
can't get it up there.
There you go.
You're wonderful. Now, this will be a new fable we'll have to write for the next generation of preachers. Now, I have read this aloud about 3 times, and I can't get through it without stopping and giggling every so often. So please, just giggle with me or ignore me. I see. This was published in 1899. A certain preacher became wise to the fact that he was not making a hit with his congregation. The parishioners did not seem inclined to seek him out after services and tell him he was a pansy, was the word they used. He suspected that they were rapping him on the quiet. The preacher knew there must be something wrong with his talk. He had been trying to expound in a clear and straightforward manner, omitting foreign quotations, setting up for the illustration of his points such historical characters as were familiar to his hearers, putting the stubby old English words ahead of the Latin, and rather flying low along the intellectual plane of the aggregation that chipped in to pay his salary. But the pew holders were not tickled.
Ooh.
They could understand everything he said and began to think he was common. So he studied the situation and decided if he wanted to win them and make everybody believe he was a knobby and boss minister, he would have to hand out a little guff. He fixed it up good and plenty. On the following Sunday morning, he got up in the lookout, as I am in the lookout, and read a text that didn't mean anything, either from either direction, front or backwards. And then he sized up his flock with a dreamy eye and said, "We cannot more adequately voice the poetry and mysticism of our text than in those familiar lines of the great Icelandic poet Icon Navarich. To hold is not to have under the seared firmament where chaos sweeps and vast futurity sneers at these puny aspirations. There is the full reprisal." When the preacher concluded this extract from the well-known Icelandic poet, he paused and looked downward, breathing heavily through his nose like Camille in the third act. A stout woman in the front row put on her eyeglasses and leaned forward so as not to miss anything. A venerable harness dealer over at the right nodded his head solemnly. He seemed to recognize the quotation. Members of the congregation glanced at one another as if to say, "This is certainly hot stuff." The preacher wiped his brow and said he had no doubt that everyone within the sound of his voice remembered what Quarolius had said, following the same line of thought. It was Quarolius who disputed the contention of the great Persian theologian Ramdazuk, that the soul in its reaching out after the unknowable was guided by the spiritual genesis of motive rather than by mere impulse of mentality. The preacher didn't know what all that meant, and he didn't care. But you can rest easy that the pew holders were on in a minute. He talked it off in just the way that Cyrano talks when he gets Roxanne so dizzy that she nearly falls off the piazza. The parishioners bit their lower lips and hungered for more first-class language. They had paid their money for tall talk and were prepared to solve any and all styles of delivery. They held on to the cushions and seemed to be having a nice time. The preacher quoted copiously from the great poet Amebius. He recited 18 lines of Greek and then said, "How true this is." And not a parishioner batted an eye. It was Amebius whose immortal lines he recited in order to prove the extreme error of the position assumed in the controversy by the famous Italian Polenta. He had them going, and there wasn't a thing to it. When he would get tired of faking philosophy, he would quote from a celebrated poet of Ecuador or Tasmania or some other seaport town, compared with this verse, of all of which was of the same school as the Icelandic masterpiece. The most obscure and clouded passage in Robert Browning was like a plate glass front in a State Street candy store. After that, he became eloquent and began to get rid of long Boston words that he hadn't used before that season. He grabbed a rhetorical Roman candle in each hand, and you couldn't see him for the sparks. After which he sank his voice to a whisper and talked about the birds and the flowers. Then, although there was no cue for them to weep, he shed a few real tears, and there wasn't a dry glove in the church. After he sat down, he could tell by the sacred look of the people in front that he had made a 10 strike. Did they give him the joyous palm that day? Sure. The stout lady could not control her feelings when she told how much the sermon had helped her. The venerable harness dealer said he wished to endorse the able and scholarly criticism of polenta. In fact, everyone said the sermon was super fine and dandy. The only thing that worried the congregation was the fear that if it wished to retain such a whale of a preacher, it might have to boost his salary. In the meantime, the preacher waited for someone to come and ask about polenta, amoebius, rhabdizuk, Quarolius, and the great Icelandic poet Navrich. But no one had the face to step up and confess his ignorance of these celebrities. The pew holders didn't even admit among themselves that the preacher had rung in some new ones. They stood pat and merely said it was an elegant sermon. Perceiving that they would stand for anything, the preacher knew what to do after that. The moral was to give the people what they want. Thus saith the Lord. All right. That's what I'm doing today. I'm giving you so much profundity that you'll hardly be able to handle it. I'll tell you that one of the Dans, my friend Dan Coulter sent me some jokes, and one of the ones was, and I just laughed and laughed. This man, very important man, was driving down the street. He had to get to a meeting. He was late for his meeting, and he couldn't find a parking place. And he said, "Oh Lord, if you'll just find me a parking place, I'll go to church every day for the rest of my life." And then he saw a space right up here, and he said, "Oh, never mind, God, I found one." Have you ever been like that? Yesterday, when I was trying to find something to tie this together, it just occurred to me, type in short stories to do with church or whatever I typed in, and this was the top of the list. So, hey, I said, "Never mind, God, I found one." I have laughed for 2 days on this. Now, my favorite kind of humor comes from real life. I mean, I have a lot of humor in my own life. I think I've told you over the last 30 years about the credit card that was issued by the state when I worked for the Department of Correction. Sadly, Juicy Darcy had to be destroyed and was replaced by Judith Dancy. I mean, why wouldn't I admit up here in worship that I had a credit card to Juicy Darcy? Anyway, I did. And 50 years ago, I don't think I've told this story. 50 years ago, there were no cell phones, of course, and to get the phone number of my friend Gloria, who lived here in Winston, I lived in Greensboro, I called the operator. And I said, I want to reach Gloria Ruffin in Winston-Salem. And she said, RUFFIN. And I said, no. I am DANCY. And after I finished, I thought, holy. And I could almost see the operator's eyes roll, and she said, no, ma'am. What is the name of the person you're calling? Oh, Lordy. I can't tell you everything about me that I think is funny, but life is funny by its own self. And sometimes an email contains a good joke, too. Dan's wife, the man who sent me a whole bunch of jokes, sent me this one. And it is a short reading from the Bible. It's from Genesis. And God promised men that good and obedient women would be found in all corners of the earth. Then God made the earth round, and God laughed and laughed and laughed. And so did I. We are connected genetically to God's laughter, created in God's image. Yep. Laughter is a part of that, or how on earth could God have looked at a platypus or an elephant or a zebra or me, much less created one, before I've had a cup of coffee without bursting out in laughter? The people have, I really believe, I've said to you several times that I believe the idea of intimacy with one another, relationship, is part of that created genetics that we have with God, but also laughter. And as you know, not everybody thinks of God in the same way. You have people who think of God this way, and then people who think of God that way. And there can be, differences on either part. And then, in my opinion, you have people who are just wrong, just plain wrong, the way that they think of God. And this little story, glad this person's not visiting today, not a member of my meeting. Okay. Sometimes it's challenging to discover not many people think your own understanding is appropriate. I remembered the offensive ads from long ago. They were on billboards, and some church or some ad agency had discovered a good way to get attention, and had created what I thought were very inoffensive ads with God speaking. They were non-denominational, and there was one on 52 North, just about Akron Road Drive, and then one on Business 40 South, just past Martin Luther King Drive. And I would be driving by and just burst out laughing. I wrote down a couple of them, more than a couple, but you don't mind, do you? God says, meet me Sunday before the game at my house. And this is my favorite. Loved the wedding. Invite me to the marriage. That's hardly laughable. And then, do you have any idea where you are going? Remember, these are billboards. And I don't question your existence. Don't make me come down there. Keep using my name in vain, and I'll make rush hour longer. That love thy neighbor thing, I meant that. I loved these ads and was surprised when a neighbor was shocked that God was being used for humor. I was shocked when she said that. And I had to take a moment before I said, well, you know what I think? I think it makes it more accessible between me and God. It's, I don't think it's dissing God, which she definitely thought. I said, even ordinary people like me can relate. My friend, like when Queen Victoria was not amused. So that friendship is no longer active, but not because of that. Hey, of all the parts of us that God created, I like laughter the most. But unless I'm laughing at myself or the human condition, I'm really not a humorist. My friend Dan Coulter is an expert joke researcher, and I asked if he could find some jokes suitable for using in meeting. Frankly, friends, he found a few suitable ones, but I'm going to have to lock my iPad because there are some in here that are not suitable for church. And oh boy, were they funny. So, Mama would have spanked me even for reading them, much less saying them aloud in front of you. But here are a few of the tamer ones from comedian Stephen Wright. You might know him. I did not, but I read some of his stuff down. But Dan said he really likes him, so all right, I'm going to start. I'm going to be very somber. Stephen Wright says, borrow money from pessimists. They don't expect it back. Half the people you know are below average. And this one, I'm going to look at your faces when I say this, because I'm going to figure out what you're thinking about. A conscience is what hurts most when all your other parts feel so good. All those who believe in psychokinesis, raise my hand.
It worked.
The early bird may get the worm, but the second mouse gets the cheese. That was what I almost didn't tell. I almost had a psychic girlfriend, he writes, but she left me before we met. I have had a string of boyfriends like that. Remember my catch and release that I practiced with men? Now I know why they're all psychic. Okay, what's the speed of dark?
Oh.
I'm not going to go on. You're going to have to laugh. What's the speed of dark? Now, you don't have... Boy, ain't it awful when you have to explain your jokes? Never mind. Never mind. I'm going to find a more educated audience next time.
Good luck.
How do you tell when you're out of invisible ink? Oops. I intend to live forever, and so far, so good. If Barbie is so popular, why do you have to buy her friends? What happens if you get scared half to death twice? And this is not a joke. I think this is absolutely on target. A conclusion is the place where you get tired of thinking. Boy, just look at the world today and you can find the truth in that. Why do psychics have to ask you for your name? Did I already say that?
No. And your checkbook number?
Let's see. The problem with the gene pool is that there is no lifeguard. The sooner you fall behind, the more time you'll have to catch up. That's my favorite. Oh, let me just sit and rest a while, Everyone has a photographic memory. Some just don't have film. That's, you can tell that was written a long time ago, right? If your car could travel, this is another speed of light one now, so let's get it with it, folks. If your car could travel at the speed of light, would your headlights work? I mean, we got a lot of thinking to do, folks. This is legit. I'll leave Stephen and my friend Dan behind and tell you that when I was a little girl, I took the preacher and my mama quite literally, and I refused to take a bath for years. Now, it might not have been years, but that's what Mama made out like it was, because they said God was everywhere and God could see everything. Well, God was a boy. Mommy's not coming in my bathroom. Mama loved telling that story. Mama told the story so much that I think I remember it. But back then, my mother's God was so absolute that it was fruitless for me to question what she said. She was ahead of her time. And I should have known that God has a woman's voice. I was early introduced into that, indoctrinated into that reality, but just didn't think about it enough. I was going to give time for you to share such memories, and there's not a whole lot of time before 11:30 because I understand the seats have springs that will you pop up if we're out. But before we say that's all, folks. Do any of you have a similar story? Was there something that you thought was absolutely true about church, God, Jesus, whatever, that you have given up?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I thought so, Mary.
That's an easy one.
What's it?
My mom told me that before Jesus came, the world was dark. So I figured there was no sun.
Oh.
It was night all the time.
Well, yeah,
Until he came.
because the light came into the world. I can see why that would. I'm going to rethink how I feel about Francis now. And not mention you. There are others who have something. Release it today, and it will not be burdening you for the rest of your. I'm going to go home and take a bath. It will not be burdening you. Anybody else? Oh, I bet you do. What does laughter do for you in this room?
It reminds me that God is real. Because I've been saying this for years. God has a sense of humor, and God wants us to laugh. And I remember back in the old meeting house, how these Sundays, when Judith 101 in laughter would show up. And they're wonderful memories because laughter is.
Oh, well, it's absolutely essential to some of us. I was thinking as I was preparing, as I was grasping for resources, I was thinking about Harry and Lawrence and Willie and who was there that were, it was never, I mean, we could have been having 4 funerals and a whatever, and there would have been laughter because of some of the people who were there. And we still do from time to time, and I love it. And laughter and tears. If we can't cry together in meeting, we're not paying attention to the one who pays such close attention to us. I have a scripture. Now, let's see. I'm going to do the scripture and then we'll do the hymn. Okay? Now, I don't need to justify a day or an hour of just laughing together. We've decided that that's a good thing. But in case one wonders the value of letting our souls take the dance floor every once in a while, listen to what the 14th century Persian poet Hafiz has to say. I sometimes forget that I was created for joy. My mind is too busy. My heart is too heavy for me to remember that I've been called to dance the sacred dance of life. I was created to smile, to love, to be lifted up, and to lift up others. Oh, sacred one, untangle my feet from all that ensnares. Free my soul that we might dance, and that our dancing might be contagious. And on that note, we will sing